Welcome back to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And we're honored to be with Lance Villio, Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. How are you doing?
Good, Jeremy. Thanks for having me this morning.
Absolutely. So we're going to have a fun conversation around community building and obviously faith's role in that and nonprofits and such. But you have a really cool backstory yourself when you talk about this work of community building. Give us a little bit of your personal background, and then we'll dive into all the organizational efforts.
Yeah, thank you. A little bit of my background. I've been in Tennessee for about a decade. Before this, I had a technology startup that we did a lot of mentoring in the kind of post-incarceration and also working with the kind of substance abuse community. And so exited that about a year ago. And prior to that, I've been a part of different nonprofits. Started in New York City right out of college, opened a safe house for internationally trafficked women, and have just kind of been able to do a lot of really fun stuff. So thanks for asking and being interested.
Absolutely. No, I think it's cool, and it shows the heart and the passion for what you do. And when you talk about trafficking, that is one piece of the equation when you look at the Governor's Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. And so this was established and launched in 2019. Give us a little bit of context around the organization, and then we'll dive in deeper.
Sure. So the concept of the idea was started federally at the White House under Bush, and so that was where this idea of including kind of a faith-based office started, and it obviously still exists now and has taken lots of different shapes across the country. And so there's really two different ways that states have brought this office into a state. One is at what's called the executive level, and that's put it right in with the governor's team. And then the other would be in a department. So here in Tennessee, we've got 23 departments. Actually, 2 of the 23, not including our office, have a faith-based office. And so across the country, there are less than 10 faith-based offices that are at the executive level like ours is, but there are several faith-based offices. And just to be, I guess, more true to what it is, it's faith-based and community initiatives. So certainly not just working with faith-based groups, but also with community partners as well, nonprofits. And so there are several versions of those across the state or the United States, and even some cities have a faith-based office. So not just at the state level, but at the city level as well.
Talk about kind of the model and give us kind of the blueprints, if you will, for this.
Yeah, sure. So, first is just to recognize how much incredible work is already happening in Tennessee, specific. That's where I'm at. And so, between faith-based groups and what we would technically call houses of worship. So faith-based group could be a house of worship. It could also be a nonprofit. It could be a community partner that maybe isn't recognized as a 501, but there's so much work that happens, and so much of what makes a community really flourish is how involved both faith-based partners and the nonprofit, kind of the community side, are one, understand the complexity of some of these societal issues, and also how people just flourish in general. And so, if you look across the state, you can certainly see where there are strong faith-based and community partners. They really have transformed their city and have vision for their city in a way that state government just is not designed to do. And so one of the things that our governor is kind of has said from the beginning of his time in office is that, government has limitations, and recognizing those limitations, and that it can't solve right, some of these really complex problems. But that's where the role of the faith-based community and nonprofits, people that actually live there and are really a part of these communities, can just play such a massive role.
Talk about some of the different initiatives. Tennessee Fosters Hope is one. Anti-trafficking, which kind of goes back even to your roots, is a piece of this as well. So talk about some of the specific focus areas.
Yeah, so the Department of Children's Services, or DCS, has been in the news a lot over since I started back in September of 22. And one of the reasons that it's been in the news is because when a child is removed from its home, oftentimes, or maybe not often, there can be times where, as the placement team with DCS is trying to find the best fit for that home, there can be a waiting period. And so obviously the goal is that if a kid is a young person, a child is removed from their home, that they would find a home that fits that child's needs and that can best, kind of keep them in the school, keep them in their social circles. But there can be gaps in that. And so those gaps often, present another kind of set of complexities. And so there was a period where kiddos were kind of getting caught in the middle there, and were having to stay in offices. And it was earlier this year that we were able to work with faith-based groups and community nonprofits to ensure that no kiddo would be sleeping in an office. And the way that our office really interfaced with that was, going and finding were there nonprofits that were already either prepared or were maybe made some small adjustments to accommodate for that. Because one of the hard parts about something like a Tennessee Fosters Hope is that it's not just for Nashville, right? It's not just for Memphis. It's not just for a rural county like a Coffee County or some of these counties that are a little more remote. You have to think statewide. And so, part of the challenge is looking at, what are some of the gaps in each specific community, and then what are the assets? How are faith communities, how are churches or nonprofits engaged, and is there overlap? And then the other piece of it is, do we have a relationship there? Have we built relational equity to where we can come along and say, hey, we have a need. You all have a way that you fulfill that need. Just here's the need, here's how to fulfill that need, right? That is often where things get hung up, is that people don't really know that that's a need. It's not like they're not willing to help. They just don't know, or they'll only know a portion of kind of how that works. And so an initiative like Tennessee Fosters Hope is really trying to provide from what they would call or what the department calls preventative services. So this is before a kid goes into custody. Are there things that we can do to keep kiddos out of custody? Are there ways that we can help families? All the way through, once a kid does go into custody, there's really three outcomes. That kiddo is going to be reunited with his family if that's appropriate. They're going to be potentially what's called TPR. So the child will, or the family will lose the parental rights, and that kiddo will then be eligible for adoption. So that kid will be adopted. And then the third is that, if they're a little bit older in this process, they might actually age out while they're still in the foster care program. And so we have to think through, not just for every county, but for each parts of those continuum of care. And how do we make sure that, one, the faith community really understands the complexity? Getting kids out of offices is really important, but really it's just a Band-Aid. It's just the beginning. We want kiddos and families and healthy families. So how do we keep kiddos with their biological family if that's not an option? How do we make sure that we're really recruiting the best foster families to take care of these kids while they're in custody? How do we make sure that if there's an adoption case, that we are doing a good job recruiting adoptive families. And then if a kid ages out, if the state is a part of launching that kid into their adulthood, how do we do a really, really good job with that? And so Tennessee Foster Soap, it tries to look at that kind of big, complex set of circumstances and provide solutions all the way up and down the spectrum. And so that's one example. And then one more that I'll share with you is, well, you asked about trafficking. So trafficking, I would say, is one of the is an example of government working really well together. And so under the TBI, so the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, they brought on a group called Engage Together that is essentially doing a process, very strategic process, where they go through and they look statewide, right? Because we're always looking statewide. What are the gaps, and where are there gaps? Where are there vulnerabilities? Where is there maybe not a service provider statewide that could help, on the preventative side, and then maybe on the aftercare side? And so it then looks at the gaps, and then it asset maps. And so if you're a part of anti-trafficking work in Tennessee, it's all centralized to this Engage Together. And we've got several of our departments there. So things that you may not even think of, like agriculture, right? Like, how would agriculture have anything to do with trafficking? Well, labor trafficking is a thing, and it exists. And so how do we make sure that our team over at the Department of Ag is fully aware of what to look out for? What are the kind of the signs that we need to be aware of? And so when you have all of those people sitting at the right table, and let's not forget all of our nonprofits that are doing incredible work. They're at the table. They're speaking into what's happening both locally and at the state level. That's where you see real change happen, is when there's high communication, everybody knows what everybody's doing, and we're working together to remove some of those redundancies. So that's actually a really great example of how state government is working both with nonprofits, faith-based partners, and state agencies kind of all together.
You mentioned starting in 2022, September, appointed by Governor Lee. What are some of your personal goals when you look at stepping in and obviously crafting the success metrics and the goals and the vision? What are a couple of those for you?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Like you said, I am appointed by the governor, and report directly to him. And this is the first time I've been in government and really understood how government works, or even the importance of government. I've always been on the other side of this equation. And so as it pertains to what are my goals, really my goals are to align with his goals. And what are the things that, from his vantage point, as he kind of looks across the state, and with him and our COO for the state, as she manages kind of all 23 of those departments, they all report up to a commissioner, and the commissioner kind of works with the GovOps team. There are so many things that we could do. And part of what I want to make sure to do is that we're really efficient with our time. And so the first thing that I really wanted to do was we were not able to receive state dollars. In the way that this office was originally set up, we were not able to receive state dollars. And, we had to go back to the legislators and say, hey, there's incredible opportunity. There are multiple other states, both, at the executive level, and then in the departments. And then if we look federally, their models are set up so that they do receive public dollars. And so, through this last session, our goal was to go and really communicate that to legislators, to hope that they would to make some changes so that we could receive state dollars, and that a fiscal note would be tied to that. And so we were able to do that. And so the way that our funding cycle works is that July 1 is kind of when we start. And so we just passed that mark. And so I've started hiring a team, which has been really, really helpful. And before that, it's kind of just me, and I have an assistant, but now we've just hired a deputy director, and we've got several other positions. So building out the office and really leaving a legacy office is really important. So kind of first term for the governor was, let's get this thing established. And then now the second term is, okay, let's really get it active. Let's get it deeply ingrained in both different initiatives and community engagement. And then in terms of some other, personal metrics, I think really hearing from the governor, hearing from legislators, and then really knowing across the state what are our biggest needs, and how do we get the faith community, which represents over 12,000 churches. I mean, this is a massive group of people. That group alone is the largest landowner, right? So there's all these incredible opportunities, and kind of our superpower, if you will, is how can we make it easy for faith communities and community nonprofits to engage in these very complex areas, and a lot of them already are and are doing great work. How can we make that easier, and how can we support them?
How can the community help your efforts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of people are not starting at zero, right? They're already very engaged. And so, I don't want to pretend like we are going to come in and save the day. Depending on the specifics of how each community member wants to engage, will drastically change the answer to that. So if you're somebody that says, hey, I'm a mom of 3 kids, and I really want to, I care about my city, I care about my state. There are several opportunities to volunteer. There are several opportunities where we'll say, hey, what are the things that you're really excited about and you're passionate about? And we'll connect you to a local nonprofit. I mean, that's really where a lot of the work gets done. These nonprofits, oftentimes they know a lot more about the complexity of some of these things than we do even. And so referring folks that come in through kind of our channel, we direct them to areas that they're passionate about and people doing really good work. We do have some, I would say, more direct services that are pretty exciting as we move into getting some funding, and our capacity will just increase. 2 that I would say. One is there's a program that Governor Lee started called the Volunteer Mentorship Initiative. And if you know anything about the governor, you know that he's really passionate about reentry work. And he worked with for about 30 years as a volunteer, an organization here called Men of Valor. And I think he would say that's a big reason why he even got into this role. Was it, you kind of go into those opportunities and you think, oh, I just really want to kind of change someone's life. And you go through it and you realize, like, oh my gosh, this person is changing my life. And so it's very mutually beneficial. We have a prison here in town in Nashville called Riverbend. And so we are starting the volunteer mentorship initiative with some men there. We have a prison in Nashville also called Deborah Johnson, and it's a women's prison. And so we are starting a same type of thing, a mentorship program there. And then in Chattanooga, where I was yesterday, they've got a very cool community-based model for inmates that are would be categorized as either on probation or parole. And so there's a little more flexibility in terms of what community members can do. And that's just getting started as well. So more of those type of opportunities specifically with the Department of Correction will emerge. And that's really exciting. And then I would say on the Tennessee Foster Sub, the initiative we've already talked about, not everyone is going to be a foster parent, and that's okay. Not everyone's going to adopt. but there are so many other ways that you can serve. If you know a foster family, going and saying, hey, we would love to, what's called respite care. We'd love to give you a night off. We'd love to bring you a meal. I mean, those things seem small, but it's actually what keeps those foster families in the game, if you will. And so it really does take a whole community to see, something like foster care work. I mean, if you think about it, it's literally saying we will open our home and we will take a child into our home. And if there's disruption, if there's, feeding them, I mean, all that stuff, like that is a remarkable way to serve your community. And it's life-changing. I mean, that's truly kind of on the front lines. And so those are just a few examples.
Yeah, absolutely. Wrap up with contact information. So where can we go to learn more and to get involved?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, which I'm sure will be posted here. That will be a big thing. And then anytime you want to email, you can email our office. And my assistant is she'll probably hate me for doing this, but that's honestly the best way at this point is Emma, EMMA at tn.gov is another way. If you hear this and you're like, oh, I gotta find out more, get in touch with her and she will she'll help kind of get us linked up. So those are two ways.
And the tn.gov is an easy way. You can search and find all about the Governor's Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. So Lance, thank you for all you and your amazing team do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Take care.